Okay, so here is the Kelvin cycle. So if we first look at what happens when light is a limiting factor, so it means that, so you know limiting factors are when it's the stuff that's basically in the least supply. So when you go from high light to low light, and you often see, you get the diagrams that look like this, don't you? Which I really quite dislike. And so this is highlight, highlight, and low light intensity.
Well, what am I going to say? Oh, she's had some drowned viewing, and they're going to think, what's that?
Sorry, family are arguing in the background. So what's going to happen? So in the light dependent stage, you get NADPH and you get ATP. So if light dependent stage has suddenly been stopped, this, change it to a red pen, this isn't going to be there, this isn't really going to be there, so this stage stops. So what happens is the rest of this can still keep going, so TP will still be converted to RUBP because there'll still be some ATP from respiration and lying around, there's always ATP somewhere. And RUBP, there's still CO2, so RUBP will continue to be turned back into GP, but because this reaction can't occur, it basically stops here. So you end up with a build-up of GP, so GP increases, and because this is still being converted to GP, your RUBP decreases, and your TP is going to decrease because it's still being able to be converted to RUBP and then like that. So you basically, instead of being a cycle, it just ends up being a one-way reaction sort of thing. And TP. Okay? And then, how do I pause? And then, just wait a sec. I know the mystery is, whatever, it's there. Okay, so back again. So now we're going to look at when CO2 is a limiting factor. So when CO2 is a limiting factor, you end up with this reaction not being able to happen. So GP is, there's still ATP and NADPH from the, oh I think this is the wrong way around. Sorry. Still ATP and NADPH from the light dependent reaction. So that is still going to go forwards like this. And there's still, there's loads of ATP, so that can keep going like that. But RUB can't be converted into GP because there's no CO2 available. So with your relative concentration, things that go like that, then the one that is going down is going to be GP and TP. It's really hot. Okay. And then the one that's going to be going up is RUBP. Like that. So that would be 0.04%, which is what's normal for CO2, and 0.001%. That's what they show in the book anyway, isn't it? Okay, so that's those things. Now in terms of when water, or in terms of like temperature, that's another factor. So temperature. So normally it's the same thing with enzymes. You have your, your optimum curve. So that at a high temperature your enzymes get denatured, and low temperature they're just really slow. And so you'd expect that there'd be an optimum temperature for photosynthesis, where the enzymes are at their optimum. So right around here. So it'll probably be, well, it'll depend. Maybe in the Arctic it'll be like 5 degrees because it's always cold there, and maybe in sort of tropical climates it'll be much higher and stuff like that. But sometimes they'll give you a graph, or they'll give you a table and say that when temperature increases what happens to the rate of photosynthesis, and or what happens to the amount of CO2 produced. And sometimes when temperature increases, the rate of photosynthesis goes down, and that, which you wouldn't expect, and that's because in your plant, when it's really sunny, or when it's really hot, you get your transpiration stream, so all that lovely stuff from AS. There you go. So water moves up like this and is lost by evaporation. And what you don't want is a plant, when that happens, is it causes sort of what's the word? Like it's a stress response, and it closes all the stomata, and that's because of abscisic, I don't think that's how you spell it, acid, or just ABA, abscisic acid, and that causes the stomata to close. So if the stomata close, then no CO2 can come in, so CO2 can't come in, and so you end up with the CO2 being the limiting factor. So sometimes they can trick you with that. So at high temperatures, transpiration sort of increases and you get more loss of water, so then the plant has an emergency stress response to stop that happening. It closes the stomata and then CO2 can't diffuse in. That's probably the only odd bit. Anything else about limiting factors? I don't know. Email me if you have any other troubles. Okay, bye.